Hey everyone, Andrew here. I appreciate you joining in for another episode of Our Last Mill. And before I get in, I'd like to just say if you haven't yet, please go rate, review, subscribe, whatever you can to help try to grow the show. I've said before, I'll say again, this is ad free, this is a passion project. My whole goal with this show is to try to help people have conversations around grief and try to normalize that. So, if you believe in what I'm doing, if you get any enjoyment out of this whatsoever, or if you think somebody else might enjoy it, please just take time to, like I said, rate, review, and just share it with someone. Okay, let's jump in. Sometimes I think about the saying, God never gives us more than we can handle. Now, I'm not religious myself, but I do find some solace in this. There's just something so reassuring that an almighty creator would take time out of her day. And yes, I said her. You can suck an egg if you've got a problem with that. That she would take time out of her day to bully us. But only bully us because it's not too much. Something is comforting about the inherent silliness of this. And whether it's our ability as humans to tell ourselves these things, or whether it's the ability to get through tragedy, we are resilient in a way that we just are capable of handling almost anything that comes our way. My guest this week has no pretense about what she's been through. Tragedies that could have derailed her, would have derailed some. She doesn't shy away from her grieving process and the journey that she and her children have been on. But her journey to heal is something so powerful, and we are just so lucky that she's willing to share her story. Trigger warning up top. This show does talk about death, so please be mindful as you listen. Hello and welcome to Our Last Mill. I'm your host Andrew, and my guest this week is Kenra, a widow and mother of 4 who practices as a transformational life coach, specializing in emotional healing and personal growth. Kenra, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
I appreciate it. It's I've been looking forward to this interview, and then just, before we got going, we had a few minutes to kind of chat and just get to know one another a little bit, and that's this is always a sensitive topic, the stuff that this show talks about, but I will say I think it's a delightful way to start a Sunday morning. I'll say that.
Yeah. It is.
I appreciate you coming on. I mean, just because we met through a site that connects speakers and people who have stories to share with a podcast host, and just I remember reading through everything that you had on your profile there. Just you've been through a ton, and I'm excited to. I don't know if excited is the right word. I am appreciative and looking forward to you being able to share your story a little bit with us today.
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, because I do know that, it feels now like selfish of me to think that, to not share this now, because I feel like this is what I needed whenever I was at my lowest. I needed to know that, hey, it does get better. It gets better. It's just not always easy.
See, in that approach right there, though, of knowing that you needed something at a certain time of your life that, wasn't necessarily there or readily available, and you want to provide that for others now. I think that is an important part of this. I don't know if work's the right word, because this is just a project for me for some, but I've spoken to so many people who are in the space of helping people in the grieving process. And the one of the common threads I've seen is everybody has gone through something that then led them to, I want to help others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's being that safe place, I think that's where my biggest problem, my biggest thing was growing up was not having that safe place to be able to feel, just to be me, just to understand all of these feelings. I like to think, to myself, often I fear what I don't understand. So, a lot of times I grew up in this fear because, I didn't understand. It wasn't because I didn't understand what the hell I was feeling. I didn't know, all these feelings. I was just alone in them. And now that's what I don't want others to have to feel like, because sometimes we don't want to bring our burden to others, or we don't want to trouble others, and that's because that's what we was made to feel like growing up, is that we was just burdening in others. So like nobody wants to hear our pain. Nobody, everybody's got their own stuff to deal with, but that's exactly what often we need, is somebody's strength. We need to borrow that for a minute and let us be weak. And then, oh gosh, sorry, my phone's ringing.
No, you're fine. I mean, so I think you're 100% right. I mean, this idea that we don't want to burden others, and it's always self-imposed. I can't think of a time in my life, necessarily where anyone was like, "Hey, I don't give a crap about what you're going through." It
Oh
is,
yes.
it is usually. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, oh yeah, like no one. That's how like, everyone like does get like that's what we just think that it means, is like, oh, like if we bring our stuff to someone, they're gonna be like, well, I don't give a shit, like, well, I don't know what
Yeah.
to tell you. No, like most people are willing to listen, but we put ourselves in that like nobody cares.
It's easy to talk yourself into not opening up because you think that no one wants to hear it, when really, I mean, I think what I've tried to whenever I've tried to not, not counsel, not coach, but just try to be there for people who are having that trouble sharing. I mean, just letting them know you have offered yourself up to others. I have friends who have, I don't want to burden anyone. Well, you're available to others when they need it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy to then start trying to do the mental gymnastics of, well, that's different. It's not. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
one of the greatest things that we can do as humans is open up to others and
Yes.
be available for
That's
others.
what our job is. I feel like that now, but that's coming from someone that has self betrayed, has overdone my entire life for other people. And
No.
but I realize now that that was also out of fear. I was giving in order to receiving, and now it's a completely different outlook. I was doing um for my husband, like for to ensure like he would be happy. So then in turn he would be there for me. So that was an often a time thing that really this toxic cycle. Like we wasn't in a we loved each other the best way that we knew how. And I don't
Yeah.
and it's really hard now. Like I look back and I realize like I love him more now than I ever did, because now I can see past the pain. I can see past all that, as opposed to before we was just stuck thinking that the other person was to fix us. And that's just such a toxic cycle, because we don't
Yeah.
realize we're the ones that have to work on our own stuff. But I would think he needed to make me happy, and he needed to make me. But I like laid out his clothes. I done all of this, and now I realized I done it all out of fear that he would leave. Like it wasn't out of, because sacrificing our own needs is never the answer to because there's so much resentment
Yeah.
there. There's so much expectation. I done all this for you. And so like whenever he passed, I didn't really have any guilt. Like I didn't at the time, because I knew I had given myself to this man. I made sure that his, mind you, I have 4 kids. Like I had sacrificed my own needs. I was 3 semesters from my RN, and I moved to Michigan to be with him. And like
Yeah.
I really like put my life on hold for him, but it wasn't really for him. It was because that I feared being by myself. So I could go all day and blame him, act like he done all this to me, but no, he didn't. I done it to myself, and that's a hard truth to admit. But it really helps me see things, I guess, from a different, like from a different perspective. But I was going somewhere with that, but now I'm confused. I don't
No,
know.
no, but I see what you mean, though. I mean, and to me, when as you're saying that, what I'm thinking is, I mean, really, when we're with, I'm not even gonna say just in a romantic relationship, but when we're in a relationship or with someone in any way, whether it's a relationship, a friendship, familial, the things that we do for them, we cannot do that in a way of it can't be a transaction,
No,
right?
no.
If you're doing something for another person, you need to do it out of, this is the thing I want to do for
Mm-hmm.
them.
And it
It
comes
it, it
naturally. I think that once we can get ourselves in that space, I think that we automatically want to help others. But it's hard whenever you're in that fear that, like, have to be accepted, have to be loved. You need that love from them, and when they don't give it, in turn we're mad and upset, and we're doing all kinds of, you know, things that manipulate, like just.
I mean, I agree. You touched on fear a little bit. I mean, fear is, it's such a weird, powerful emotion and motivator. Like, it's, there's so much, I think, that is, there's so much negative that's a result of like fear that people
Mm-hmm.
face. Fear of the unknown, fear of the different. I think that drives a lot of people, and it can really spiral.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but just even what you were saying too. I mean, the capacity I think that humans have to be good and kind to others, it never ceases to amaze me.
Oh yeah.
You hear so much about negative and bad things. I mean, but I don't feel like we take the time to appreciate or just hear about all the great things that people will do. I mean, there's a reason why whenever positive stories come out of a child did a fundraiser for a friend of theirs so that they could get some medical thing that they needed, or they could do something. It speaks to so many people. It's because, I mean, it's a natural thing, and this is something I think we beat out of kids,
Oh
unfortunately.
yes. Sorry to yes. That's what
Yeah.
I hate. But this is something that's real. So my two oldest kids, I have four. They're now 11, 10, 9, and 8. But my 9-year-old, that he, whenever he lost his dad, he was still um, he was around six. There was 4, 5, 6, and 7 whenever they lost their dad. My two younger ones was still under the radar, that they hadn't developed a lot of my bad coping skills. They hadn't developed that avoidance, that stuffing everything down yet.
No.
Because they was still allowed to feel, but as there's 4, you're constantly stopping them, or like you don't even realize that you're doing it. You're just, because it's so much stress on me that I'm always, not making time for them to feel all the. So my oldest ones, though, they really struggled with the feelings and all of this. But we've done a lot of work since then. But anyway, my third child, he is the most empathetic, and it's just like it's just so lovely to see, like he, like, because I was able to wake up for myself. I was able to stop being the mom that was running from the feelings. I was able to actually be there for him and his feelings. And that child, he, oh God. I mean, it's just lovely to watch, because I feel like that's how we all was. We're all supposed to be like this. Like, okay, like a kid, the coach or whatever fell at basketball, and he fell across the floor. Most kid, was like, oh God, everybody, because we all know that embarrassment. But Mike, he's the first one to run up and say, "Are you okay?" He doesn't see it as oh, he sees someone down, and he knows that means to lift them up. And it's beautiful. And I know I'm talking from, and this is a kid, mind you, that I don't even remember his birth. I don't, because I was so in survival mode. I don't even, in this, I was madder than hell the whole time I was pregnant with him, because I had already had 2 kids. I had just finished my bachelor's degree. I had looked and seen how much daycare was for 2 kids. And now I'm pregnant with a third. Mind you, Justin, my husband, that's the way he preferred it, because how can he keep me home if I'm pregnant? So there's a whole other, that's a whole other issue. But I was upset the whole time I was pregnant with this kid. And it's just beautiful to watch. And now, that's just the way that, and I'm not even, it's nothing about just being my favorite, it's not about, like, it's just really beautiful for me to be able to see a kid, in his age, just be so empathetic and be so, like, he will just go out of, like, and it's beautiful because he plays football and he's like so good, but like he can't take no credit, like he doesn't come over there and be like, yeah, I'm tough, like his little brother will. He'll get one, or his older brother actually, but he's smaller. He will get one tackle and he'll be like, yeah, did you see that? But Caden, he'll come over there and he'll make the best tackles of the game, like good. And then, but he doesn't come over there, and the coach comes over there and said, man, you got speed on you, I didn't know that you had that in you. And I was like, he does. I mean, it's just,
he's just humble.
Yes, and it just is so beautiful to watch because, like, I have two that I have messed up, and that's a hard thing for most parents to be able to say, okay, now, because we see these bad traits in our kids and we think, what is wrong with them? And it's like, and instead I looked at it as, where did they learn this from? What part of me are they expressing here, and what can I do to work on it? And it took a lot, because, like, I had to do a lot of apologizing to my kids, like, hey, like, and it was.
But what?
Go ahead.
Well, I'll say this though too. What you just said about apologizing to your kids, I think that's really important.
Oh,
yes. I try to make it a point, if I screw up with my daughter, if I get upset, if I raise my voice, if I feel like I didn't listen to her, because you in the course of a day, you just like, okay, I've got to do X, Y, and Z, and then a kid, your kid comes along and they want to do something else. I mean, it's easy to get frustrated and say, no, we're not doing that, we're doing this. I try to catch myself in the moment as much as I can.
Yeah, and that's what kids can do. That's what they do for you. And I mean, I think it'll be beautiful for you to watch, like, that's where my growth come in, is being able to stop in the moment and saying, okay, they need me. And a lot of us think that means that they just need us to do everything that they, no, like, a lot of times they will understand. Like, I remember going through my own stuff and, like, running from my grief and realizing that what it was doing to my kids and all this. But once I would start explaining to my kids, like, I'm like, mommy is going through some shit right now. I'm sorry. I love you, but I will be back. And I would go in the bathroom and, I would cry or whatever I needed to do. And then I'm like, okay, now what's going on? Because I would feel myself, like, I would feel the heat. I would feel, like, I would be aggravated. And I'm like, this is not a time, to... And my two oldest, they can really, they have all kinds of my wounds in them, and we're working through them and all of this. But, like, yesterday I had to apologize again because Austin said, fine then, you don't talk to me. Something. He's like, because you just want to scream. And I'm like, Austin, and I wasn't even screaming. I was just talking like this, but it was just stuff he didn't want to hear. Like, he didn't want to hear that it was on him. And then he said, fine, then don't talk to me. And then he walked out, and then I had to sit there, and I'm like, because, I don't want to go tell him I'm sorry. I don't want to tell him that I handled that wrong. But I walked out there, and I'm like, I opened the door, and I'm like, I'm sorry. He's like, for what? And I'm like, because saying I didn't care if you didn't talk to me. And he just looked at me and he was like, I know. And then, it was just fine. But I would have never been able to do that, 2-3 years ago. I would have never been able to tell them that, like, I'm sorry that I didn't handle that good, because that takes a lot whenever to go to this little person that we think that we're so much bigger than. Like, who am I to go apologize to this little feller? But it's like, I want him to know what it takes to be a good human, and that means I have to show those qualities. And it's hard whenever you wasn't taught those qualities. You never seen a parent apologizing to you. Our parents didn't. Our parents didn't do that. But, like, but go ahead.
What I was just gonna say, but I mean, you've got it though. I mean, it's not easy to do, but I think them seeing it, I think, goes a long way.
Oh yeah.
You just seeing that. Okay, my parents aren't perfect. but they can at least acknowledge it and apologize
and move
for
on. And that's what we want in our kids. That's the big thing that, Caden, he can have a big, like, the difference in how, like, we deal with emotions and stuff. Caden knows, hey, I'm getting aggravated. He doesn't tell himself this, but he might, I don't know. But anyway, he gets frustrated and he will start crying, and see, he still has access to those tears. My two oldest ones, they're tough guys. They
Yeah.
will hold all that stuff back, and I'm like, God, that was exactly like me. But Caden, he can still cry, and he will walk out on, he'll go out on the back porch, and he'll be mad, and he'll do whatever, and he'll cry, and then he will come back, and he comes back as, the more centered, the more, just child, like, he just can walk away, realize that, hey, this is happening, and I'm not going to act in my best self. But the other ones, they're getting better. I mean, mind you, they was holding a lot of this grief in for a long time. Like, Austin would, he would come home with stuff in his pockets. His pockets would be filled, and I was like, what's... And I talked to him, I was like, Austin, and he's like, well, whenever I go to throw something away, I just see a face on it. And, I know, and that's... A lot of this is so much, like, we don't realize that's what's happening in a lot of us, and I'm like, this is why I've got a garage full of shit. Because you don't want to, but now, I don't bring in stuff, because I'm not trying to fill that void. But I realize, like, that's what he's doing, is trying just to fill this void. And I realize we have to get through this grieving process. And I remember he was downstairs, and he was, at nights, he would start to cry sometimes, and he would be like, Mom, no, just sometimes whenever I start to cry, there's something in my throat that won't let me do it. And I realized that yesterday I was going through the same thing, because I had said, I knew I was walking into the dollar store, and I was like, my chest was tight, and I was like, I know I just need to cry. Like, that's just what it is. I just need to cry. But anyway, he had said there was something in his throat, and I had to tell him, I was like, Austin, I was like, that was Mommy. Mommy wasn't that safe place for you to just naturally release that. I was like, and I'm sorry. And I was like, but it's okay. And he said, well, so-and-so said that big boys don't cry. And I'm like, baby, it's not true. You need to cry. You need to let that out. And if not, you're just walking around just trying to put on this protective shield just to protect that part of you that so desperately needs out. And it's just crazy to watch how much my children can just change once they're given that permission to feel. Because I think that for so long that I took that away. Like, I didn't let them access, to do the one thing that I think that we all needed to do. Because it wasn't until I was able to cry and let out all this pain that I was really able to start healing, really able to start making a difference and showing up differently in my life and my kids' life and all that stuff.
I think that's really common, though.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to dismiss it. That's just, I think it's really common that we struggle to let those emotions out. I know I'm 36, and I still struggle with, whenever I feel something like that, letting it out.
Because I think... Yeah, because I think that's because from a young age, and I think that that's the big work that I wanted to do, like, for my kids, is to let them, that come naturally. Because I think that struggle is what our parents, who was just fighting their own wars, they never meant to do this. It's nothing about blaming our parents. It's just about understanding that they also was struggling with this same thing. Struggling because their parents, nobody had time to feel back then. And now it's this big thing. Oh, well, we need to feel these feelings and all this. And I think most of us struggle with, like, okay, how do you start doing that? How? And that's whenever, like, it really is about finding that safe place. Like, and we can't go to our parents anymore and, just hug them and, break down. And I think, but we can do that, like, with us and finding that safety. But then it also is, I guess, about getting into that, like, giving yourself space to, to feel. Like, a lot of times we fill up our days with everything, and we're never giving ourselves that, time just to feel our bodies, to actually, like, feel what's going inside of us. We want to, play something or get involved in other people's drama or drown out that pain or cover it up one way or another. And I think that that's what's keeping it inside of us.
Yeah. It's, it's this idea of if I don't have enough time in my schedule to feel like crap, then I'm not going to feel like crap. Mm-hmm. And no, it's what you're going to feel it. It's just whether it pops up in the middle of something else or whether it pops up whenever you're trying to fall asleep at night.
Yeah, and
the feelings don't go away.
Yeah, they come out, and that's what I think is so important for us to give ourselves that space, because then they're not showing up now in your in your frustration or whatever the next day on the people that you're intending to love, like your kids or your spouse. It's not coming out on them because you have gave yourself that space to get it out. And it's a hard, especially whenever we have trained ourselves, or you can say conditioned ourselves to not feel that, to not let ourselves be weak. And it's hard to let ourselves cry. I remember whenever I was lying on the bed and I was telling myself this would not last forever, because I think it's so hard to, like, let ourselves get to that point, because we think we're going to be stuck in this crying cycle for, however long, because we have never, like, really, for the most part, experienced it, that where we was crying and then we realized, hey, like, I feel better. Like, if we would understand that and get to that point, then the next time whenever that happens, it's a lot easier to let ourselves go. It's a lot easier to let ourselves fall into that abyss and then know this will not last forever. Like, I've been through this before. Like, it's okay. But getting ourselves out of that habit of avoidance, and that's a whole nother ballgame, and it's a lot of work. I mean, it is.
It's not easy, but I mean, you're right. It's a lot of work. It's not easy, but it's worth it.
Oh, absolutely.
Whenever you get, and I don't even know that it's a one time. Okay, I'm finally better.
No,
I think it's just it's a constant. I'm not solved. I'm not healed, but I am better than I was yesterday.
Yes. Yeah, and sometimes, and it's okay, and it's like, and then if something happens today, then we will deal with it. It's just like having that trust and that faith in yourself that things will work out. I've got this. It's okay. Like, my feelings cannot hurt me, but running from them certainly has and will. So, like, the best thing that we can do is to give ourselves this space. Like, it's amazing. Like, and I think that now, like, by giving myself space, that was the gift that I was able to now give my kids, is because that was the biggest thing that I needed. I found that was the biggest thing I needed as a child, and I knew that I could then, we want to give our kids more. We want to give them more, everything that we didn't have, and that was my big goal, is to give them that safety, because I believe that if they come to me with their crying and it's a safe place, that's what's preparing them to be able to do that for themselves, like later on. Like, that is that, because they will no longer be afraid to show their vulnerability or let themselves be weak, because they have had plenty of experience with me that they know that they can handle it, that they, they won't forever need me to, be that strong person. But I missed a lot, like, because you're talking, they have just lost their father, but I was way too involved in my own pain to be there for them. So I realized what I was doing was loving them the same way at that time that I was loving them myself, like, ordering Amazon, or, eating a bunch of, just anything just to feel better. Like, I ordered like 1,500 things from Amazon the year after his death. I don't even know, it was just to cover up this void, just to, I would feel uncomfortable, and you wanted to get this high from something. You wanted to feel a little better. And
It's a dopamine hit.
yeah, so you just wanted to just to feel a little better. And now I've ordered like 30 items in a year from Amazon. Like, I don't really need nothing now. And it's amazing that because I'm no longer trying to fill this void, no longer just trying to feel better. I'm actually better. And it just, but it takes a lot of work to get to that. And that's what, most of us, we want to be like, oh, well, I done this and this and this, but it's like daily effort that you have to give yourself that space. It's just a lot.
I mean, and I've said this on the show before, and it's something I really firmly believe is that there's no, I think, right or wrong way to grieve, but there are ways that are better and healthier than others.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, even, what you're saying about ordering stuff or eat, it really is. It's, some type of dopamine hit to feel a little bit better about, just in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think people, we can fall into these, unhealthy, relationships with things like shopping, with food, with
people, anything. Anything.
People, yeah. That's
to not make us feel so low.
I feel a little bit better for a few minutes or for a little bit, and that's where I say I can't fault anybody for it. But I think what you said, though, about realizing that, hey, this isn't the healthiest way for me to be right now. Mm-hmm. That's growth. I mean, and I will say too. So we've kind of worked backwards into it. I typically start with the person that you lost, and then talk through the grieving process. But we've kind of started with the grieving process. You've touched on it a little bit, but can you tell us? I know you mentioned that your husband passed. Can you tell us about him?
He was a he anyway, I was trying to figure out like where to start, but he passed 4 years ago. He was 34, right? Yeah, he would have been 34, and he was leaving on his way to work, and I knew he hadn't texted me at 7, and I knew something was going on, and I wrote him. He still didn't write back. I wrote his job, and I said, "Is Justin there?" And they said no. And this has happened one other time that he didn't text once he got to work, and he had told me but this time he said no. And I pulled up the maps, and it said that there was a wreck on the road. So I knew that something, so I ran down to, I was sick. I was sick, like your stomach, everything, everything goes through you, you're sick, something is major. I ran down the street to my mom's, and she was like, "Kenra, what's wrong?" And I was like, "He's gone." And she was like, "Kenra, you can't say that. He's too mean." I'm like, "No, he is gone." Because he was, he was a Marine. He was, she's meaning, he's too tough to die. This didn't just happen, and I was like, "No, he's gone." Something in me just knew that he was gone. And it was, I don't know, it was before we could even get ready. Oh, because I had called right before I had told her that, I had called dispatch, and I was like, "Are they a wreck?" And they was like, "Yes." And I said, "Well, I'm afraid it's my husband." And she said, "Well, what would he be driving?" And I told her, and I could feel the crack in her voice. She didn't tell me nothing was happened, but she said, "Well, the state troopers might be able to get you through there." She didn't tell me it was him. She didn't tell me he was gone. But everything in me knew at that moment that he was gone, because I could tell that. So I went down there, and then it was shortly after that the cops pulled up, and you knew, whenever the cops show up, that's what. So I just walked outside, and I just broke down. It was just. But then that whole, you think, oh well, then that should be okay. I'm saying break down, but then it's then shortly after that I realized, it hits you that, okay, now you have to tell 4 kids that their father isn't coming home. And that's the part now that, really, like, because I can see how, like, stuck in my own stuff I was. Like, I wasn't really able to even acknowledge their pain. Of course, I'd told them, but I was so stuck in my own, like, I wasn't able to really be that safe place that and I don't fault myself or blame, because I realized I was going through a lot. I couldn't expect myself to hold it all together and to,
No.
But then again, that's also what I done, like, I tried to be this strong person that, like, oh, like, hold all this in, which ultimately I think really ended up doing more harm than good, because really they just needed, me to be weak with them, like we can just get through this. And it was fun, to say the least. Like, it was rough. Yeah. It was rough. And then, like, you have your so that first year following is, I really ran from it. I really that was the Amazon business, like the covering it up. You're doing whatever. It's just like you're like a child, like, like my kids, like, oh, that they want this, so you're like giving that to them, because you don't really know any other choice. I start to see that I was loving them exactly how I loved myself, and that meant more avoidance of pain rather than being with it. And I was really just, if they wanted this, they got it. I mean, because he had life insurance, and so, and I realize now that money, the only thing that it ever provided was something, or a ticket to run. It gave me an outlet instead of, forcing me to face it and to deal with it. And it was about a year that I had done this, and I realized that my kids was not still, there was no growth. They was still in so much pain, and I could just look at their eyes, and you just knew that, something, and I guess it really spoke to me in my own childhood, as I realized that this was the problem that I had, is I was alone in it. And I realized that my kids, it wasn't the loss of their dad that was really going to impact them. Yes, it's going to hurt, but it was having to deal with that alone, having to bury those emotions down and then run from them their entire life. And I think that was the gift that now I could give to them, is like that safe place, that it's okay to hurt and to feel all of this, baby. We don't have to run from it forever. And that's just an ongoing job that I think that now my whole role as a parent completely changed, because, like, I realized I'd need to be with their pain. We want to protect them, not let nothing happen to them. But really, it's like, It's okay. Stuff's going to happen. They're going to get hurt. But it's just not leaving them alone in that hurt. That's what they need. It's just need their pain to be acknowledged and it to be felt, and they will go along their day. And it's beautiful to watch these emotions play out and stuff in my kids now, because I realize, like, they can cry and they can just go on. They can be fine. Like, they can come in from a hard day and cry. Like, they don't just do that often. I don't act like they just come home from school and just start crying. But, if they...
Yeah.
But, sometimes they come home frustrated and they just need to let those tears out, and then they can continue on.
They feel more comfortable feeling those emotions.
Yeah. Because it's something that, I can welcome them. And Braden, my oldest, has even told his doctor, he's like, no, my mom just wants to talk about feelings all the time. He's the one that's just like me. The one that wants to run from them. Feelings are... And I said, buddy, you will thank me one day that, like... Yeah. And I mean, it is like... And it's hard, because I can see those defense mechanisms. I can see those, go up in my older kids. But, like, my two oldest. But Caden, he just doesn't... If he feels something, he just feels it. And he's just such a present kid. He's just so, like, there. He just listens. And it's just really beautiful to watch, like, a kid that can just feel their feelings and go on. Like, it's good.
I mean, you've got a tear popping up in my eye just because, I mean, just from hearing you talk, I mean... So this is how I perceive this as you talk about this, and it feels like, you still... I can tell that you still feel like, okay, you hate that it went the way it did at first. And the thing is, I know that feeling of parental guilt, because you feel that over any little mistake you make, right? Mm-hmm. when my daughter was an infant, I picked her up from her crib one night, and it's in the middle of the night. She's crying. I'm picking her up so I can go change her diaper to put her back to bed. I pick her up. Her blanket gets caught on my arm, and I fumble her a little bit, and her face like falls into my shoulder. She was fine. She cried because it scared her.
Yeah, and
She just turned 7. She just turned 7. I still feel that will still pop in my head sometimes. I still feel guilty. Something that's what she'll never remember that. But I know that seems like a really silly story, but to me it just means we hold on to these things as parents, and we want to hold ourselves to this really high expectation. And anything we do that we perceive as in any way bad for our kids is harmful. Is just the guilt you just carry, and it's not easy.
Mm-mm. No,
but what I will say though, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
But what I see though is from talking with you as somebody who realizes that, who is making every conscious effort, because we're not going to be perfect as parents. No. We will screw up
a lot, so often. Mm-hmm.
But the ability to apologize to your kids when you do it, the ability to make an honest attempt at like, hey, let's fix something, because anything broken can be fixed. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right? So the ability to be able to do that, and you are learning from your children, and I don't know if you realize that in yourself, but I mean, just from talking with you, you're learning from them.
They're their biggest. That's their biggest. They will point us to all the places in ourselves that we need healed. And what I think that's beautiful, you think you have like this guilt for hurt, but that is just a minor thing as far as but the biggest thing that you gave her was that presence of, here, I'm here with you. I know you're hurting or you're scared, but I'm here with you. And you calm those fears. You calm that in her afterwards. And I think that is the biggest thing that as parents that we need to do. We can cause our kids to be afraid of a lot. We can cause them to, all of this, but the most thing that they need is us to be there just to help them, not to fix their feelings, just to be that safe place for them to feel it and, for it to naturally flow through them instead of them holding on to it. And I think that as parents, that's what a lot of kids, we unintentionally do to our kids, is we teach them that feelings are something to be buried, to avoided, to cover up, rather than there's something to be felt. And like just giving her that space. I know she was just an infant, but that's still the same thing even as they grow, is that safe place to be able to feel. That's the biggest thing that I think we can give our kids.
I agree. We being a parent is the hardest easiest job in the world. Mm-hmm. This is the best way I can describe, and I think it's a personal thing for each person. But for me, it's hard because of the amount of pressure I put on myself to, am I being a good dad? But then, it's easy in terms of, it has never been so easy for me to love something and someone this much. Mm-hmm. It is mind blowing that you can care this much about another person, that you can care this much about, how well you're doing something. Mm-hmm. But it is also, it's just so cool because I still learn stuff from her all the time, and clearly your children, and having 4 kids, I know that they each teach you something different.
Oh yeah, see, that's what I think, that I wouldn't have been able to get to the spot that I am if I didn't have 4 kids, because I didn't have one kid that would show me these parts of myself that I need to heal. I always had somebody pointing to something that I needed to work on, because I think it's so easy as parents for us to get into like, oh, my kid is behaving like this, or they need why or whatever. But a lot of times it is us, like they're learning this stuff from us, like we're teaching them how to behave in certain situations, and we don't realize it because we're just so unconscious to it, or whatever. We're so stuck on that autopilot, like loving the way that we was loved rather than loving how we want to love our kids. Like, and I realized that that's what I done for so long, was just run from my stuff, and my parents taught me to do that, and then I taught my kids to do that, and then now I'm upset because they're running from their stuff and not dealing with anything. And they was prescribed ADHD medicine, they was prescribed all this, but ultimately it was they just needed a safe place to feel. I mean, now they're off medication. I mean, like they're doing better than they ever was, even on medication, because I feel like they just needed to feel that stuff instead of spend their life running from it, and that's.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a place for medication, but I mean, I really think the first place you want to start, I know for me personally, is okay. What's the root cause of the issue, and can we work through it that way? I do think it depends on the person, but I mean, I think that's always the best starting point is what's the root cause? How are you feeling? How do we talk through this? How do we work through this?
Yeah.
What's the improvement just from doing that?
And it's like daily, like that daily effort, like stuff. Like, medication gets us through a point. Like, I mean, following his death, I was on a mood stabilizer, a antidepressant, anti-anxiety, but I also was, that got me through some of it, made me numb to some of it, but eventually I was worried more about my real healing than I was covering it up. So, like, even with my own kids, like, I have gave them, they have been on the medication, but I realized that was it could be more used as something to help them rather than to solve the problem. And I think a lot of times we see medication as something that just needs to solve the problem. We want an instant fix, and then we don't really ever do the work that's required us to need that medication, or ever, we just hope it works, and then if it don't, we change to another medication. And it's like a lot of times it's a lot of those feelings that need to be worked out that's all underneath that, rather than just covering it up or numbing it.
And that's the thing, in the idea of numbing pain. I mean, if I have a toothache, numb that. But if I'm feeling something in here, numbing that doesn't, even numbing the toothache, it doesn't make it go away.
Nope.
Sometimes you don't need a Band-Aid, you need surgery. Sometimes
you just got to take that out and feel it. And I think that's one of those that crying, that release, like, a lot of times people don't even understand, like, how much strength comes from just a good cry. Like, I just know, like, sometimes I just need to cry. And it's not even about trying to figure out why or where, or, it's nothing about that. Like, instead of getting, like, a lot of the times we think that the feelings is something that's, like, intellectual. We just need to figure it out. And I've done a lot of writing and reading and all of this to understand all this. But my healing was ultimately based on something that we can all do, is just feel it. It wasn't like I didn't need to understand why that I was getting overwhelmed. It was just, I just was. And crying is an instant relief. It just helps. It just helps. It does. But I was somebody that ran from it my entire, no one seen me cry. Like, I did not. That was just not something that I done. But, I was always the one that tough guy, or, I must say guy, but that, had it figured out. And I can see it so clearly now in other people whenever they're wearing that mask. I'm like, oh gosh,
you need to cry.
Yes, you need to cry. You just need to cry. It's okay. You don't have to pretend. And even my kids, they walk around. Brayden, he's the oldest, that I'll be like, gosh, buddy, like I'll be like, you're the cool guy. Yep, you're tough. And he would, like, I would joke with, like, it's just good to be able to, like, be on this side of it, because I remember how miserable it was running. Like, I remember how miserable it was, always trying to put on this brave face and pretend like everything was okay. And even though it's difficult, that valley, to come down and to let yourself cry, that's part, it's tough whenever we've worked so hard not to for so long, but, like, on the other side is there are beauty on the other side of pain. You just have to let yourself feel it.
Being tough doesn't feel good.
No. I'm stronger now than I ever, and I can cry like a baby. Like, 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 it's nothing about, like, being sensitive. Like, I've worked so hard to get to this point, to be able to feel, to be able to connect with, myself and my kids and everyone. So, like, I know every part of me knows that running is not the answer. No matter the feeling, it will not hurt you. It's just what it is.
And you think about it. You may have learned it the hard way, but now you can try to teach others,
Yeah.
your kids, your friends, strangers, anyone who listens to this. I do want to ask too. Before we start wrapping up, obviously our last meal, grief is a big part of it. The another part is food. For when you think of your husband, what foods do you think of? What foods remind you of him?
Well, and it's crazy because I just put a peppermint in my mouth, and I do it out of unconscious thing now because I realized, for so long, Justin he ate candy. He would have to have, it was Fire Jolly Ranchers at one time. It was Purple Blow Pops. He always had to have a mint. He always had to have something in his mouth. And it's just crazy that it was in my own healing that I started to realize, whenever I get anxious, I would want something in my mouth. I would need, and it's just crazy because I realize that it wasn't he just liked this and it was that just being present that calmed him. It was whatever it was at the time. So now it's these peppermints, and I can now do the same thing for my kids. Sometimes before my kids are going, they have a basketball game or something, and if they put a mint in, it helps to relax them. It helps to focus, stop focusing on whatever your mind is telling you to focus on, and just taste that, just to feel it, just to to really pay attention, to not to check out of wherever your mind's going, and really pay attention to the present moment. And and it really does, it really helps. And it's just crazy because for so long, it was I would go to separate stores looking for his Purple Blow Pops, looking through the little things, because that's what he was into at the time. And it's just crazy that, how it's, so much is connected, but we're so, we don't see all that stuff until we experience it, and then we're like, huh, and everything starts making, because he was done 2 9-month tours in Iraq. He grew up a very troubled childhood, dysfunctional, both parents' addiction, 7 children, me or him, neither one had no, coping skills. So it's you just learn them as you go, and it's just crazy because I see that, his mints and all of that was just a way for him to, try to check out, but still be present, rather than, doing drugs or whatever that he had previously, prior kids, it was addiction, and, which is common when people have, it was just, so anyway, that's, I don't know where I will keep going, so I'm going to
No, it's okay, because I get it though. It was a grounding technique. Because what you're saying, as you're saying, what I'm thinking is you still get to be present in the moment, but it's almost like having something in your mouth, having that piece of candy is just I can kind of focus on chewing this piece of candy, or on having it in my mouth. I can suck on the piece of candy. I can I don't know if you do this, but whenever I've got a piece of candy or mint or something in my mouth, even a cough drop, I'll play with it in my mouth. I'll just bounce it from one side to the other.
Yeah, that's what I have.
And I've never thought about it.
Yeah, that's what I have to be careful with, is because that now I just felt myself put it in my mouth, and I know if it can pick up real heavy on a microphone. So usually right. I won't put them in my mouth during this time, but it's just sitting there, and it's if I don't have one in, I often will put one in, and I'll have candy papers all over, and people will say about me and my candy papers, and I'm if that's the worst addiction, that I go through, after all this, I can handle it. But yeah, it really it is a grounding, it makes us really focus on that, the present moment, and we don't even realize we a lot of this goes above our awareness. We just know that it makes us feel better, but it also allows us to stay present and not really check out like we would want to, because I was let me just touch on this. Say 2 years ago, I was one that was in my shower with clothes on, maybe 3 years ago, with clothes on, because somebody was knocking on my door. And it wasn't nobody, it was my neighbor. But I was so overwhelmed by everything that I couldn't even answer the door. Like I couldn't, like somebody knocks on your door and the normal thing is to answer it. I mean, but nope, not at my house. Like I was
You needed to get away.
Run from it. Run from any type of, and I realized, that's what I'd done my whole life. So like even coming on this podcast, like at first, my first instinct, well, not my first, but it is part of me that still wants to say, okay, just stop. This uncomfortable, like, okay, well, just check out. Yep. I could come up with a million excuses why I don't show up, like all this. And then I have to remind myself, Kenra, just show up. That's the only job that we really have, is just show up, just be present. Like, it's okay. Like, but that part of me that still wants to say, just run, just go, avoid the uncomfortable. And then I have to say, well, if, this is where you go. This is, this is how it works. But it's really is training our brain to that part of us to kick in to say, to remind us of that. Because it's so easy to fall into those habits that we have, ran from for so long. And yeah, it's all about showing up, being present, and dealing with everything that you normally... It's uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable.
Yeah, there's growth and discomfort. Right?
Oh yeah, absolutely, every bit of it. Yeah, and it's you have to remind yourself that every time. Like like I can be crying now, and I can be glad. Somebody the other day said, "I hate whenever I see you like this," and I was like, "I like whenever I'm like this." I said, "I know that now it's over," and I mean like now it's. I'm no longer wearing this, like, trying to pretend like that it's all okay. Like, now I can just get this out. I said, I'll be fine in, like, 10 minutes. Like, it's okay. But I know most of us get very uncomfortable whenever we see somebody cry. They're like, oh, God, we need to fix this. Oh, God. But, like, and that's what I think that I can really give is to that safe place, because whenever I see people cry, it's just beautiful to me now. It's because that I know that that's where the healing takes place. Like, it's okay. Like, this is just how it, it's just part of the process. But a lot of us think that it means, oh gosh, our life is falling apart. And it's like, no, just for a minute. It's just falling apart for just a second. But it'll, you can have a clear head afterwards.
Yeah. That is a beautiful way to look at it. Kenra, I am so appreciative of you coming on today. Before we wrap up, though, there's two things I always like to do. The first one is, and I gave you a little bit of warning about this earlier, if you could go back and have one last meal with Justin, what would you want to have?
I would have the meal that I cooked the night before that he passed, and it was like Monterey chicken. It was something that we had actually at a steakhouse that was in Michigan, and then whenever we moved, I wanted to figure out how to do it, and it's like has like cheese and bacon and a baked potato, and it was crazy because you asked that from the beginning, and I was like, I'd never even thought about that. And then it was the meal that I had cooked the night before, and the morning of, the text message that he didn't respond to was a text message me thanking him for such a good night before, because I had cooked that, and it's like usually a meal that I would cook like on our anniversary, because I would cook like baked potatoes with it and like cheddar bay biscuits and all this, and it was just it was just crazy that I had thanked him, like we had actually had a good night, and which was sometimes unusual, and it was just good. So like, yeah, if I could have one more meal, that's what it would be. But probably at Lucky, like at that steakhouse. I don't know, I don't know me.
You wouldn't want to have to cook for it.
No, but I mean, I would, but
Yeah, I understand. I appreciate you sharing that. I appreciate you sharing everything with us today. I think that there is a lot of strength to be found in how you have approached everything that you have been through, the way that you have decided to grow and heal from it, and also be there for your kids, for others. I have a lot of admiration for the strength that you have.
Yeah, and it's crazy because I see that in all of us. It's not, I appreciate it, and I really, but it's like I really, because I spent so long, like, thinking that I couldn't deal with anything, like, that's why I shared about being in the shower. Like, at that point, I didn't think I could deal with anything, and it's just like, I want other people to realize that that strength is in them too. It's not like I wasn't given nothing special. I was definitely not handed very good cards. I had no coping skills. I could not deal with anything, but I could learn, and that's what we all can.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Kenra, can you tell the audience where that they can find out more about you and the work you do?
Yes, you all can on my website at www.calmingchaos.support. You can reach out on there. The Facebook and all that stuff, that's all located on there.
Okay, I'm gonna make sure that I link out to everything in the show notes so that people can find that. But can you also tell us just what kind of services you offer?
I do more grief coaching and more working with parents that are stuck in their more, in that pain. They're wanting to really focus on trying to be more present and not, running from themselves. And because that's, I don't even know where I was going now. Because I was realizing this is supposed to be just a second thing, and I always keep going. So, but
that's okay.
It's to help us to be that safe place, in order to actually find that part of ourselves that we can allow ourselves to feel and ultimately heal.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the work you're doing, and I appreciate you coming on and talking with us today. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you again to Kenra for being a guest today and for talking with us about her story. You can learn more about Kenra and the work that she does at calmingchaos.support or on Facebook and Instagram, and I will link to all of that in the show notes. You can also subscribe to Our Last Meal wherever you listen, and please take the time to rate and review so that other people can find this podcast. I would also love if you'd follow Our Last Meal on social media at Our Last Meal Pod, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, whatever your flavor is, or visit ourlastmeal.com. If you are ever interested in being a guest, please feel free to reach out to me. You can click on the Share Your Story button on the website. You can DM me on social media, or you can email ourlastmealpod@gmail.com, and I would love to talk with you. Until then, please take care of yourselves and share a meal with someone you care about.